A business can involve an animal that fits inside the palm of your hand. Yet the moment you try to move that animal across an international border, you can find yourself dealing with wildlife authorities, customs officials, permits, inspections, and, depending on the species and circumstances, serious legal consequences. And the strange part is that the animal itself may not be where the biggest money is. The real economic opportunity can be hidden in something measured in microliters. It's venom. But before anyone starts thinking this is an easy way to produce millions of dollars from a room full of plastic containers, there is a problem. The venom is extremely difficult to produce in commercial quantities. The regulations can be complicated, and the difference between a legitimate research supplier and an illegal wildlife trader can come down to paperwork. So what does it actually cost to build a legal scorpion business? How much can the animals and their venom realistically be worth? And why can moving a few scorpions across a border become a serious legal problem? This is the economics of owning a scorpion business. Welcome to Raymap's Profit Lab, where we break down the real economics behind unusual businesses, expensive assets, and industries most people never think about. If you enjoy seeing exactly where the money comes from, where the costs go, and what can destroy a business before it even starts, subscribe to the channel, because this is exactly what we investigate here. The first thing to understand is that there isn't one single scorpion business. There are at least 3 completely different markets. The first is selling live scorpions, usually into the specialist pet, collector, breeding, or educational market. The second is breeding scorpions and selling captive bred animals to other licensed or permitted buyers. The third, and potentially much more valuable but much more complicated market, is venom production for scientific research. These 3 businesses have completely different economics. Selling live scorpions can actually be the simplest model. You need a legal source for the animals, secure housing, environmental controls, food, breeding stock, records, insurance where available, and a way of transporting the animals legally. But even here, you cannot simply assume that because a scorpion is small, it is unregulated. The United States is a good example. The federal government does not have one universal license called a scorpion license. Instead, the rules can involve federal agencies, state wildlife authorities, agricultural authorities, and local regulations depending on the species, where it came from, and what you intend to do with it. The U.S. Department of Agriculture specifically warns that many invertebrates, including scorpions, can be illegal to own because of risks to agriculture and the environment, and it tells people to check whether a USDA permit is required before purchasing a land-dwelling invertebrate. USDA also points people toward its PPQ 526 permitting system for certain invertebrates. That means the first expense in America isn't buying 500 scorpions. It is determining exactly what species you are allowed to possess and under what conditions. Then there is international movement. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service treats wildlife broadly enough to include arthropods and their parts and products, meaning wildlife import and export requirements can apply even when you are dealing with something as small as a scorpion. If the particular species or shipment is covered by CITES or another wildlife rule, additional documentation can become necessary. So if someone buys scorpions in one country and simply puts them into luggage to sell in another country, that isn't a clever shortcut. It can turn a commercial shipment into an enforcement problem. The United Kingdom shows just how serious the licensing side can become. Under Britain's dangerous wild animals legislation, certain scorpions are specifically controlled. The listed category includes all species in the family Buthidae and the species Hemiscorpius leptris. For those animals, keeping them without the required license is not something you solve after the animals arrive. You need to deal with the licensing system before possession. And the license itself is not necessarily the biggest cost. Current council examples show application fees in the hundreds of pounds, with veterinary inspection fees potentially added. Cambridge currently lists £357 plus the vet's fee, while Charwell lists £485 from April 2026 plus inspection costs. Plymouth's current schedule shows a new dangerous wild animal application for one class at £463, followed by a £208 grant fee. Those numbers immediately change the economics. A person might think, I can buy some scorpions for a few $100s and start selling them. But if the species requires specialist licensing, the cost of the license, inspection, compliant enclosure, insurance, veterinary involvement, and secure premises can easily become larger than the cost of the animals themselves. And then there is Canada, which demonstrates why you cannot simply copy the rules from one country and apply them everywhere. Canada's CFIA currently lists scorpions among certain other invertebrates for which a phytosanitary import permit is not required under that particular plant health framework. But that does not mean every scorpion can simply be imported without checking anything else. Canada tells importers to determine the specific requirements for the commodity and destination, and its border system can require documentation depending on the animal and circumstances. So Canada may be less restrictive under one federal pathway than someone expects, while provincial, municipal, environmental, wildlife, transportation, or other rules can still matter. That is the important lesson. Canada doesn't require this permit is not the same statement as you can legally import any scorpion into Canada. Now we get to the part that makes this business financially interesting: venom. Scorpion venom has become valuable because it contains complex mixtures of proteins, peptides, and other molecules that researchers investigate for applications involving ion channels, neuroscience, cancer research, pain, and other areas of biomedical science. But the internet has created an enormous misconception about the economics. You have probably seen headlines claiming that scorpion venom is worth tens of millions of dollars per gallon. A figure around $39 million per gallon has been widely repeated. But that number should never be interpreted as saying a farmer can collect a gallon of venom and sell it for $39 million. The fundamental problem is production volume. Research has measured venom yields in individual scorpions in quantities of only a few microliters. One study found average extraction quantities around 8 microliters per scorpion initially, declining to around 5 microliters during a later period. Another experiment reported yields in the range of roughly 4 to 9 microliters, depending on species and diet. That is an incredibly small quantity. And venom extraction isn't something you can treat like milking a cow every morning. The animal needs to be maintained, fed and handled safely, and venom production varies with species, age, size, diet, temperature, and extraction method. Research has found that electrical extraction can produce greater quantities than manual extraction in some studied species, but that doesn't magically turn a small animal into a high-volume chemical factory. Now look at what happens when the product reaches the research market. Sigma Aldrich, for example, currently lists venom from the North African deathstalker scorpion, Lyurus quinquestriatus, at $1,150 for 10 milligrams and $5,300 for 100 milligrams on its U.S. product listing. Those are extraordinary prices, but there is an important distinction. That is a specialized research product sold with specifications, quality control, storage requirements, and commercial infrastructure. A farmer cannot automatically assume that 100 milligrams of raw venom collected on a farm is worth $5,300. This is where the real business model appears. If you want to supply serious laboratories, universities, or biotechnology companies, the valuable product isn't simply venom. It is documented, traceable, consistently collected research material. The buyer may care about the exact species, origin, captive bred status, extraction history, storage, contamination, concentration, and analytical characterization. That means the business starts looking less like farming and more like a miniature biological production facility. Consider a hypothetical small commercial operation in the United States. Instead of imagining $1 million farm, start with perhaps 500 captive bred scorpions. Depending on species and source, the initial animals could cost anywhere from a few $1,000s to substantially more. Secure enclosures might cost another several $1,000s. Temperature and humidity control could add $2,000 to $10,000 depending on scale and facility. Backup power is important because environmental failure can kill valuable breeding stock. So another $1,000 to $5,000 is a realistic planning range for a small operation. Then there is feeding. Crickets, roaches, or other feeder insects become a recurring expense. At small scale, this might be several $100s a month. At larger scale, the feeding system itself becomes a production operation. Add security, monitoring cameras, escape-proof containment, cleaning equipment, protective equipment, business insurance, legal consultation, accounting and permits, and a serious small operation can quickly move into the $15,000 to $50,000 range before you have anything resembling a sophisticated venom laboratory. If venom extraction is the objective, the budget can rise significantly. You need appropriate extraction equipment, secure handling systems, sample containers, cold storage or freezer capacity, weighing and measurement equipment, documentation systems, and potentially laboratory testing. If you want to sell material as serious research-grade product, third-party analytical testing can become one of the most important costs. And this is where many supposed Scorpion business calculations collapse. Suppose a Scorpion produces roughly 5 microliters during an extraction. 5 microliters is 0.005 milliliters. Even before considering density and drying, you need enormous numbers of extraction events to accumulate meaningful volumes. If 1,000 Scorpions each produced 5 microliters in one extraction, that would be only 5 milliliters of raw venom. 5 milliliters. That is why the headline price of venom sounds so spectacular, while the actual farming economics can be much more difficult. Now imagine you have 10,000 Scorpions. Suddenly you have a substantial biological asset, but you also have 10,000 animals that must be housed, monitored, fed, and accounted for. Mortality matters. Breeding cycles matter. Labor matters. Extraction frequency matters. Buyer demand matters. And most importantly, the venom has to be sold. You can have an extremely valuable substance and still have a terrible business if nobody is willing to buy your particular material. There is also another revenue stream: the Scorpions themselves. Specialist collectors may pay significant amounts for particular species, captive bred lines, or breeding pairs. But again, prices vary enormously. A common species can have completely different economics from a rare, legally restricted species. And the most dangerous species may actually be more expensive to manage rather than more profitable. A legal Scorpion operation needs a species-by-species strategy. You need to know where the animals originate, whether collection from the wild is legal, whether captive breeding is permitted, whether the species is protected, whether CITES applies, whether import or export permits are required, whether your destination country allows possession, whether your state or province allows possession, and whether the animals can legally be transported through the countries they must cross. This becomes especially important in Africa, Asia, and other regions where wildlife laws can be strict. Crossing a border with live wildlife without the required documentation can result in seizure, detention, fines, and potentially criminal prosecution. The U.S. government itself warns importers that failure to comply with live animal requirements can result in refusal of entry or penalties. So if someone is thinking about building a business by collecting Scorpions in one country, putting them into containers, and physically carrying them across a border to another country, that is not the business model to copy. The professional model is the opposite. Establish the legal ownership chain first, obtain the required permits, document the animals, use compliant transportation, and clear the shipment through the proper authorities. And the economics ultimately come down to one question: what exactly are you selling? If you are selling ordinary live Scorpions to hobbyists, you are operating an exotic animal business. If you are selling breeding stock, you are operating a specialist breeding business. If you are producing venom for research, you are entering a biological materials market. And if you are trying to isolate individual molecules from venom and sell pharmaceutical-grade compounds, you are no longer operating a simple Scorpion farm. You are entering biotechnology. That is why the most realistic starting budget isn't a few $100s for Scorpions. For a properly structured small operation, a reasonable planning range could be roughly $15,000 to $50,000 for a basic compliant breeding and sales operation, while a serious venom-focused facility can move into the $50,000 to $150,000 plus range once secure premises, environmental controls, extraction equipment, laboratory testing, professional services, and working capital are included. Those are planning estimates, not government-set fees, and the actual number can be dramatically different depending on the species and jurisdiction. The biggest mistake would be spending $30,000 on animals and equipment before finding a legitimate buyer. The smarter economics are the reverse. Find the legal market first. Identify the species that can legally be kept. Identify laboratories, universities, licensed dealers, or specialist buyers that are actually willing to purchase the material. Establish what specifications they require. Then design the farm around that demand. Because in this business, the scorpion is not necessarily the most valuable asset. The license is valuable. The legal supply chain is valuable. The breeding stock is valuable. The data and traceability are valuable. And the relationship with a legitimate research buyer can be more valuable than thousands of animals sitting in containers. The scorpion business, therefore, isn't really a story about a tiny animal producing liquid gold. It is a story about scarcity, regulation, biological production, and an extremely specialized market. The venom can be expensive, but producing enough of it consistently is difficult. The animals can be valuable, but possessing the wrong species can create legal problems. And crossing a border may turn an apparently simple shipment into a wildlife enforcement issue. That is the real economics of scorpion farming. The money is potentially high, but so are the barriers to entry, the regulatory requirements, and the cost of doing everything correctly. And if you ever see somebody claiming that you can buy a few hundred scorpions, milk them every day, and become a millionaire because their venom is worth tens of millions of dollars per gallon, remember one number: 5 microliters. Because once you understand how little venom an individual animal can actually produce, the entire business starts looking very different.